Hello friends, this is Scott, hanging out inside my house today by my Christmas tree we just put up. Kind of a great view of that, huh? Well, today I've been outside doing some chores, getting some fall cleanup done. I finished the project garden cleanup a couple days ago, so I'll be doing a whole video on that. But I decided I'd do a video on pruning because that's kind of what I've been doing lately. And I think I'm going to slow down my cleanup process so I can show you how I prune various trees, shrubs, what I do with perennials, what I do with annuals, flowers, and just what I do to clean up the yard. I get I get kind of in a hurry and I start tearing everything up, and we got weather changing, we're supposed to get some snow, but I think it'd be a good idea to break down some of the pruning issues and techniques that basically a pruning 101. I see a lot of people that are pruning and they're not making the proper cuts for the proper desired results, and therefore they end up with a mess. They end up with trees, shrubs, and flowers that just do not look good, and they wonder what they did wrong. Well, I'm going to do a pruning 101 today just to show you some very, very basic stuff. Now, there's lots of techniques for lots of different types of trees, different types of shrubs. There's different times of the year that you should be pruning, but right now I'm just going to talk about the basic cuts themselves, because no matter what you're cutting, there's a way you do it and there's a way not to do it based on what you want to achieve with the cut. So with that, here comes Pruning 101. Starting today, we're taking a look at my flowering plum tree, or one of them in the front yard, and you can see I've done various cuts on this tree. But as you can see, there's little suckers that come out of the sides of the trunks, or the limbs. And as I look up a little higher, you'll see where I made a cut before, and then you notice that I don't just have one little shoot coming out, I got a whole bunch. So I didn't do a very good cut there. So here's what I'm going to show you here. This is the most common mistake that we often make when we're pruning trees. Now, I don't want to dig into the trunk of the tree, but I want to cut it flush, because everything that I don't cut flush is going to give it room that grows these little suckers. So instead of just having one little sucker like I showed you a minute ago, you end up with a cluster of them. And it just becomes more and more of an eyesore, and it's just not what you want for the health of your tree. So you want a good, clean, flush cut. And here you go. That's the way. It's the best way to do it, so there's no little stump for it to grow. Now here's a look at the stump, and you notice where I should have cut it when I first did it, and I didn't do it right. So that's what I've removed. Now I talk a lot about purpose of cuts. Now if I wanted to make this tree grow a lot out of that little base stem, I would have done it. I would have cut it like this one. Just say I want a lot of growth out of this, which I don't. You can just see some other bad cuts that I've made. But if I wanted it to thicken this up, I would have cut it just like this, and then it would grow suckers. I've already pruned this tree out, all the suckers, but now I'm going to go through, and because I didn't do a good job before, I'm going to clean it up now. Sometimes you just can't reach based on other stems, based on other prunings, you just can't reach in to get the proper cut. You can always come back and do it later. And so I'm going to clean up my cuts that I haven't done great in the past so that I don't have more suckers coming out of this particular little stem. But that's a good cut now. That'll clean up that mess. Another look at a cut that I just couldn't reach at a certain point when that old stem was there. And so I just cut it off as close as I could reach in with the pruners, and as you see, there's little sucker growth that comes out of that bad cut. So now I can clean it up. I can cut that out. Here's another one. I cut off a limb, and I did not cut it flush. So where I didn't cut it flush, guess what? Where I used to have one, now I've got multiple suckers coming out of that nub. So I need to come in here and cut that out and clean up that trunk. Now again, these are cuts that I'm trying to eliminate a whole branch, not trying to make it stimulate growth. There's another cut that I had a hard time getting in there. Sometimes it's just what it is. But it's interesting how trees heal. I like the way my pears heal, my flowering pears. They develop kind of an interesting callus on them, and very kind of pretty. I enjoy looking at these trees. Now here's the ugliest, nastiest rose bush that I think God created. I have that in my front yard. And it's funny because it used to all be a cascading rose, all blooming at the same time. And then it's kind of hybrided out. It went back to its roots, to its root stem, I should say. And half of the rose blooms yellow, which is the nasty thorns, and half of it blooms red, which is the more smooth stem. So in the same bush, you'll get two different roses. Kind of interesting. Now here's another look. Here's a fruit tree. This is my Asian pear. And you can see this is where I've pruned trees to get extra growth. Now I've cut mid-branch, I've cut, I'll get into a whole technique of why I cut where I do on certain fruit trees. But this stimulates growth. And so if I want to get fruit closer to the stems with more fruit, then I want to cut them. I want to cut the stems and create growth. Now here's a sucker I don't want, so I want to cut it as flush as I possibly can. Sometimes you just can't get it perfectly flush, so I may have a sucker come out of that. But, if I want to eliminate the branch, I want to cut it all the way back, not digging into the bark or the trunk, but just flush. Now, here's a common mistake we make when we have little sucker trees coming up. See where I cut that one? Well, that's lazy, okay? If you can cut it off at the base and don't dig it up and dig up the roots, you're just making a stronger tree, because pruning stimulates growth, and so now this is going to be harder to dig out. Now, pruning does have its disasters. Here's a Japanese maple that I had probably for 20, 25 years in this house. And I pruned it at the wrong time of the year. I drastically pruned it and I killed it. So it is possible to do a bad job pruning, and sometimes things don't make it. So that used to cover up our little wall here. And now I got to pull this trunk out and I've got to figure out what I'm going to do with it. Now here's a look at my front yard, and just trying to show you the different types of plants that I'll be dealing with in future videos. Now this is the bush that I showed you earlier that I didn't do the greatest job pruning. That's a Rose of Sharon there. You see an umbrella tree in the background. And I've got other types of more snaggly bushes. I don't remember what this one's called, but as you look at the base of this one needs a lot of cleanup. I try to prune my trees up and my bushes up. I don't like things laying on the ground. I like to have a little understory. But I've got roses in here, and I've got other annuals and perennials, or should say mostly perennials in here, and lots of leaves I've got to clean up. But there's just different things to cut, but the same basic premises or principles apply. If you want to eliminate an entire branch, you cut it back to the main stem flush. If you want to stimulate growth, you cut it back mid-branch, and it'll then shoot out new suckers out of where you cut. Now here's a tree I took out a few years ago that was dead. As you see, I left the trunk in there, but even though it's dead, there's still suckers shooting up from the sides. And as I scroll through the yard here, you'll see some other little annuals, perennials that I need to clean up with different techniques. And I'll kind of scour around here. There's some hostas. Those are simple, to clean up. You just basically just rake it out, pull it out. Here's some Shasta daisies that you can either pull out or cut. There's a big spruce, decorative spruce. I can't remember the exact name of this one, but I'll show you how to prune that one, and I'll figure out the name of that on another video. And here's some cone flowers. And again, there's a way that I take those out. And then they're perennials, they grow back. More Shasta daisies. And then I've got other daisies and other miscellaneous black-eyed Susans, and there's some hostas in here, and then there's just some other ground cover. So there's lots of things I need to clean up in this yard, and there's a lot to talk about in future videos. But again, I was getting in a hurry today, and I started just tearing everything out, and I thought, you know what, I need to slow down so that I can show what I'm doing. Because sometimes you get a little carried away. I'm afraid the weather's going to get me, though. I'm not going to be able to do much the next few days. So there's the umbrella tree there. And I have a magnolia, that white trunk tree in the middle, and along with the flowering plums on the street. So I've got a little bit of everything in the front yard. Well, that concludes today's video on Pruning 101. Again, what I got out of this today was, if you want to get rid of a limb, you cut it back flush to the base of the tree. If you want to stimulate growth, you cut it somewhere mid-branch based on what your desired results are. And that's how you stimulate growth, because pruning does stimulate growth. So anyway, hope you want to continue to follow me living my best rural life in the city. Please subscribe to my channel, like, share, and comment, as I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.